and want to just say hello to everybody and thank you for joining us. Here we strive, and our main goal always is to keep real wrestling alive. Thank you very much to everyone who's joining and listening. We also put this in podcast version if you didn't know. So if that's even more convenient for you, you can go ahead and find us on wherever you listen to podcasts. Just in case that's more convenient than playing the video from YouTube. So once again, I'm Raul. I have a long time of like basically a lot of experience training in catch wrestling, and that's kind of the point of today's episode, where it's like oftentimes you'll see catch wrestling marketed almost like oh, if you do all these unusual or unorthodox submissions, you can beat anyone. Um, that's quite often what's going on, where it's like it is trying to be sold kind of like that, where it's um, like these are the secrets to beat anybody. And unfortunately, even in like the self-defense space, there are a bunch of like online courses like that, where um, or even like online well, nowadays online, but I mean there used to be a lot of like in-person seminars and stuff where it's like fear no man and you can beat anybody, and with just learn these few techniques and this and that. um but I'm here to say it's like it doesn't really work that way, and I think we can just easily give the example that a lot of people would understand. With Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's like we have the belt system, and it's like that people who have higher belts or higher ranking, they put in a lot of effort, a lot of training time, so years worth of training to like say like master these techniques. So same thing goes with catch wrestling. You don't like learning some submissions and stuff like that, or some certain techniques and stuff won't make it so that you can automatically get these submissions in a match, right? And I think this could probably be like detrimental to catch wrestling over time, right? So that is very problematic. And actually, like, I saw that we have a comment from someone named Marcus James. Hi, Raul from Wigan. So hello, Marcus. If Marcus trains in Wigan, that'd be great. If you trained at the Snake Pit in Wigan, or whatever you train in, right? If you train in something, you know that it takes time. So martial arts, it's called like the word art is in there for a reason. So all kinds of arts take practice. They take they take time and repetition, right, in order to make it a skill. And but even so, if you learn techniques and stuff, there's still that art to it, right? So that you can perform in a match. And that's kind of the problem, where we see it. I'm sure it's in everything, right? In all kinds of martial arts, and all, even arts itself. There's so many things where there's so many people are trying to sell you stuff online, like like you can even see if you're on YouTube a lot. I don't know if you ever see that, where it's like, oh, like become a YouTuber and take my class or read my book or whatever like that. There's that. So it's in all kinds of realms. It's in all kinds of professions and whatnot. But because I am in catch wrestling, it's I guess maybe it's upsetting to me to see that in catch wrestling. And so I just want to make sure that people understand that um, you know again, wrestling is an art. And so like the people who you see, like the Olympics are occurring right now. Next week, I think in a few days, I think it's this Sunday or Monday, I believe the wrestling might be starting, if I got that correct. So that'd be the Greco-Roman and the freestyle. Um, so I think people recognize that you can't just like get up one morning and then be an Olympic quality freestyle or Greco-Roman wrestler. So I wish that catch wrestling would not be sold in that way as well, where it's not just so easy to like sell it like, oh, just learn a few techniques and then you'll be able to beat anybody. It's just not true. It always takes like understanding the wrestling itself, the wrestling aspect, and then you can like more easily get some of these submissions. It's not just like you grab someone and then you can or they'll allow you to get these submissions. It just doesn't work that way. Sorry to burst anybody's bubble, but um, it just was annoying me because you see sometimes you'll see some of the like ads or videos on social media, and some people act like they know it, and then they're doing all these weird things, and you just don't see them getting these, and like saying if they do a match, like you just don't see them um, hitting these things. Right. Okay, so let's get back to Marcus James. You wrote another comment. On my way home from catch wrestling session at the Snake Pit. Very good on you for seeking out authentic catch wrestling. All right. I wish more people thought that way, because it's a real service to catch wrestling and the preservation of authentic catch wrestling for people to seek out authentic sources like Snake Pit in Wigan. Uh, John Strickland in South Carolina is called, his organization is called American Hook Wrestling, or here, Catch Wrestling Alliance. I'm based in Los Angeles, California. It was weird. Like someone on social media was like, "We don't have anything in California." It's like, um, it's like it's so weird. So how like maybe they could follow us on social media and not know where we are. So it's good to like repeat some of these things sometimes. So I've had I'll like, starting just with myself. I have many years experience in catch wrestling, from Snake Pit and Wigan, also from John Strickland's American Hook Wrestling. So that's like the American lineage of catch wrestling that goes back through Frank Gotch and Farmer Burns. I am based in Los Angeles. I teach here as well at Fight Science MMA currently. So every week, so there is authentic catch wrestling in California, in Los Angeles. So I think I'll pretty much will probably have to just keep repeating that because yeah, say like if someone is brand new and they just find our videos or whatever, just let people know that we're there. So sorry if to those of you who pay attention and have been here for a while, you already know you know all this information, but just for the new people. So we are here in Los Angeles. John Strickland is on the East Coast in South Carolina. Then we got the Snake Pit in Wigan. So seek these original sources out, or these most authentic sources out, and you will find much more success in your grappling, right? And so that's kind of like another big thing that I'd kind of like to talk about, where it's like you definitely want to be putting in the work, right? You want to be grappling, drilling. You want to be, even if you can, I mean, like maybe even try going to some different open mats at your local like no-gi jiu-jitsu place, or it doesn't matter if they do gi or not or whatever. See if someone will roll with you in no-gi, and see how you do. So you still want to like have the like you want to have your mentality where you're thinking about pinning someone, but just use your pinning ability, or your pinning mentality, to hold someone down and then work on getting your submission holds. Right, I think it'll help you to, it'll help make the catch wrestling more alive, right? So instead of just going up against like amateur wrestlers, right? So instead of just going up against like the local high school team, I think if you can, roll or train with some of the amateur wrestlers, I think it'll benefit you, but only so far, because even though both freestyle and folk style came from catch wrestling, they've gone so far away from catch wrestling that it might even be more beneficial to train at a no-gi jiu-jitsu place, because submissions, right? So if you want to be competing in no-gi jiu-jitsu or submission only matches, um, I think that's great. So you got to get used to people who are aware of and who are going for submissions, right? So in your gyms, make sure you are always doing submission stuff, but keep that mentality of going for the pin, so you can understand better how to, like we say, restrain or control someone's movements so that you can set up your submission holds as well. So keep that in mind, especially if you want to especially if you want to even look like a catch wrestler, because that's another thing. If you'll see people saying like, "Oh, we're doing catch wrestling class," and they show pictures of their training, and like everyone's on their backs or whatever. It looks more like jujitsu than any kind of wrestling. So it is really good to start working on getting off of your back, right? So if someone throws you back down or gives double legs you, takes you back onto your back, don't automatically think of putting someone in guard. Think of, say, like even getting a turtle. You don't necessarily have to stand up, but seeing if you can reverse, um, reverse some of these holds, right? Or reverse your position to see if you can't get back on top. All right. Marcus James, we are always told we need to learn to wrestle first. Yes, that's correct. So think of that, the pinning aspect, um, and then you can, again, like I said, like control the person best, but you do not want to uh, completely avoid or completely neglect the submission aspect, because then you'll get submitted, really, especially if it is like a submission only match where they don't count pins. So I want you to still think of getting pins, still go for the pins, because what the pin will do, will not only help control the person, so that you can set up your submission, but it can quite often help you to pass their guard, right? So I think what I want to be doing, or I guess I was probably going to talk about it later, but since the Olympics are going on right now, you're going to see a lot of people. We're gonna see a lot of highlights, basically. So I think maybe we'll try to do that, like where I'll take some of the highlights and show some of the techniques, and then how to follow through and maybe get a submission, or maybe depending on how, like what happens in the Olympics. See, but I'll try to maybe show submissions, or how to better go for a pin. But just know that freestyle uh, is not like well, it's not my favorite style because the whole parterre stuff. So what's more realistic or more catch wrestling like wouldn't necessarily be lying flat. If someone takes you down, you want to try to fight back up, right? So um, so Marcus James, if you're still listening, that'd be one of the things where, say, like Coach Roy would talk about like doing like a far elbow technique or something like that, where you don't necessarily just lie flat, even if you are doing freestyle competition, right? So freestyle again it's got a lot of rules, and so um, you play within those rules to try to get those points. It's a very short time limit, so um, unless you're really good or you fall into getting someone into a pin, you might not get pinned. You might not win by pin. You'll probably win by points. So we'll be breaking down some of the highlights as they occur, or like if anything interesting occurs. We'll kind of break it down, and we'll kind of show you, like we have in the past, like some of these old videos where we kind of show some breakdowns of collegiate USA collegiate wrestling, because that would be what we call folk style wrestling, or international freestyle. So we'll try to show some of the follow throughs to try to get some of the submission holds, because that is would be kind of like the branch of the whole idea of pinning, or the whole idea of wrestling, right? Because that's another thing where, say nowadays, maybe it's just in the United States, but people who follow MMA a lot, when they talk about wrestling, right? They use the word wrestling, but quite often what they mean are takedowns, right? So when they talk about like such and such a fighter, their wrestling is really good or whatever, a lot of times they're just talking about takedowns. So their takedown ability is good, right? But judo has takedowns. We have these other styles that have takedowns, um, and they're not necessarily like wrestling styles. So I think ultimately, a lot of people just have this strained understanding of what wrestling is, but that comes from say like folk style and freestyle. Kind of, even though they came from catch wrestling, they've grown so far from like the original root, right? Like people get some weird ideas of what wrestling is. And so the one of the goals of the Catch Wrestling Alliance and the authentic catch wrestling sources around the world, they're trying to show the original version, and the original version had pins and submissions, and you were aware of all kinds of danger, and we weren't separating these things. What's true about like say like folk style and freestyle, I mean, there's like basically it's the difference between amateur and professional. So the amateurs didn't have as much danger or as many potentially dangerous techniques that they were allowed to use. But wrestling lost that professional, more dangerous version. So that's why, again, we have these weird understandings of what wrestling is. All right, so that's really unfortunate. So I'll just continue to highlight these things. And so I guess, since the Olympics since freestyle is going to be happening um, in the next few days, then we'll definitely try to do a lot of highlights and breakdowns for you guys to kind of let you know this difference, right? Being cognizant of the submission holds, right? But yeah, go ahead and let me know in the comments or wherever if there's anything in particular you guys want to hear about, because quite often actually a lot of people ask for takedowns because that tends to be missing a lot because a lot of people do jujitsu. So it's not really a big thing in jiu-jitsu schools. I think even though I said that right now, I think I'm going to get a lot of comments of people saying like, well, in my jiu-jitsu school, we learned some takedowns, but okay, good for you, right? But it's not the main thing taught in like the majority of jiu-jitsu schools. A lot of them follow the International Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Federation rules and stuff. So a lot of times they're going for their own point system as well. I think that's why I kind of like a lot of what's happening or what's evolving with Nogi in particular. That's becoming a little bit more free. And there's a lot of submission only tournaments where they don't do points for takedowns or points for certain positions. They try to have a winner. So just like catch wrestling, we try to have a winner, right? But there is time limits, but at least you're trying to get closer to kind of like a realistic outcome where it's not decided by points, because it's just so like what soul crushing to lose by a point or something like that, where the person didn't necessarily defeat you, they didn't pin you, they didn't submit you, but if they got that takedown or whatever, and and that was it, right? So they got the 2 points or whatever, and but it's like they didn't hurt you at all, and so that can be kind of devastating. So I prefer the whole catch wrestling aspect of no points, and you go to until someone wins, or you do something like submission only, right? So like a lot of the nogi or the events that are becoming more and more popular in nogi, they tend to be nogi, right? And they tend to not have points. They will have a time limit, um, but someone often gets a submission, and if they don't, they choose it a lot like catch wrestling, a lot like how we do it in our matches or our events, and a lot like how the Snake Pit in Wigan has their events. Like if someone does go to like if a match does lasts the entire time, then a winner will be chosen by whoever was the most dominant. So in a way, in many ways that's more fair, right? Because if they take you down and you're not able to get back up, or if you're underneath and struggling the whole time, you obviously didn't win. So that's a little bit more reasonable, um, like a reasonable way to decide a match, right? So Marcus James. So yeah, you mentioned mat wrestling and getting back up. So yeah, there's all kind of wrestling aspects, right? And so unfortunately, a lot of people kind of misunderstand what wrestling is. So especially like in MMA, they're thinking wrestling is just takedowns and whatnot. So actually, mostly like takedowns, right? So then they're all uh, like amazed, right, when someone like Khabib is able to just like control the fight once they get someone down, or even to take someone down and then keep them down. They're like amazed, right? And then they're like, oh, this is whatever kind of special kind of wrestling and whatnot. So it's not some magical, mystical thing. It's just like more of a continuous style of wrestling. And I think that's probably Khabib's point of view, where it's like he's having more of the perspective of authentic catch wrestling, in that it's a continuous fight, right? So in amateur styles. So like you're gonna see, if you watch the Olympics, if you watch freestyle, you're gonna see if someone gets taken down, they might go flat, right? So they're gonna stretch out their arms and legs, and the person on top is gonna try to roll them over, because if you roll someone over enough times, you will rack up enough points where you can win the match, right? So there's no pin, right? But you can rack up enough points where they can end the match. Um, so that's going to be kind of like the freestyle perspective, right? But that's not necessarily the catch wrestling perspective, or that's not also the perspective of an actual fight, right? And one of the things, so going back to the idea of the snake pit and Wigan, one of the things that the head coach Roy Wood said one time was that catch wrestling is more realistic, or it's more like a real fight, because of that aspect where you don't have a referee that's going to stop and stand you up. Say like in freestyle wrestling, where if you're unable to roll the person over or get a pin or whatever, then once enough time passes, the referee will stand you back up. Right, they'll blow the whistle, it'll reset, and you'll start again. Right, in catch wrestling, it's not like that. If you are on the bottom and you want to get back up, you have to actually get back up using your techniques, right? While at the same time your opponent is trying to keep you down, or trying to submit you, or trying to roll you over so that they can pin you or submit you, right? So um, that's kind of the difference. So there's this mentality difference, or this mindset difference that I think that it's kind of like not so well understood by people who aren't studying like authentic catch wrestling. So you're gonna have people who are gonna even approach learning catch wrestling from their kind of base style, or their base understanding of what they believe wrestling is, right? So then they're gonna think like, oh, I gotta take down, so I'm good, or I reverse somebody once, so that's it, or I can stand back up, and then like I'll be free, and then that's it, right? But no, there's more to it, and there's still a fight going on, right? So even if you were to stand back up, it's definitely a viable option. Like say if you get taken down and then you're able to wrestle out and then you stand back up, totally fine, right? But then you're neutral again, right? So then you actually have to then go back in and see if you can't, um, see if you can't beat the person, right? So sometimes you want to try to not only think about getting out and standing back up, see if you can't do a lot of these submission, or not submission, but these reversals that are really characteristic of catch wrestling. So we have a lot of really beautiful reversals. Um, Marcus is definitely learning a bunch of those at Wigan, right? So that's kind of the mentality, where it's not just like I want to stand back up, I don't want to get out, and like because sometimes you'll even get points for escapes and stuff like that in amateur wrestling styles. But in catch wrestling, again, there's no points, right? So, and that's why it becomes more realistic in that, the match is just ongoing, right? So there's no points. You can't be thinking like, oh, someone took me down, and so now I'm behind in points, or someone did whatever, and or I escaped, so now that must count for something. No, it doesn't count for anything. You got it. You're still in a match. You're still in a fight, right? So, um, hopefully you get my point of view, or hopefully this helps you to understand the wrestling or the catch wrestling point of view, because the amateur wrestling point of view is actually different, even though they came from catch wrestling. The with points and the barring of all submissions, then the perspective is changed, or it has changed over the decades. So if you look back at some of the United States collegiate wrestling videos, a long time ago, like in the 30s and 40s, you'll still see people putting on the double wrist lock position, or doing what is called, it was considered a bicep slicer, kind of like a key lock kind of a thing. But these are pinning holds, so they're considered wrestling holds, right? But again, they've been barred. They can help you pin somebody, and they can also help you to submit somebody as well. But a lot of these things are just not available for amateur wrestlers, and so unfortunately, that's like something that like no-gi jiu-jitsu is taking advantage of, because they're kind of discovering some of these techniques and implementing them, and then they're trying to make it seem like they invented it or whatever. So then you get people thinking, there's another claim that I hear on social media where it's like, oh, well, catch wrestling will just get enveloped and absorbed into jiu-jitsu, and it'll just be gone or whatever. But again, jiu-jitsu has their own perspective, their own way of competing or viewing a match, right? So even though they might incorporate some techniques they saw um, from wrestling, or from catch wrestling, it's still they're still going to be approaching the match, or grappling from their perspective, right? I think a big example, and probably one of the best examples, is 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, where you have the creator of this style, Eddie Bravo, who did some high school wrestling. So then he learned the one pin from wrestling that we call it like the guillotine, or the wrestler's guillotine, and he renamed it. Right, so he took the same technique, renamed it, which and he calls it the twister. Right, so so those of you who do jujitsu, you might know that technique, because he really popularized it when he like kind of made his style, and so people are thinking that that is a jiu-jitsu move, or that's like a 10th Planet move or whatever. But no, it's an old wrestling move that's been around for centuries, or millennia, right? Um so then, to kind of further my point, where it's like they might take techniques and then invent their own style, there's like you're still seeing a lot of 10th Planet people grappling from their backs, right? They also have the rubber guard and all that, where you're trying to submit someone from being pinned, right? So like where you like a position where you would lose in a catch wrestling match, right? So what I'm saying is that you know catch wrestling will not just completely disappear if we can work together to keep real wrestling alive. But a lot of these techniques will continue to get like stolen or absorbed from wrestling or catch wrestling. But the one thing that they aren't stealing, right, is kind of like the way of doing things, right, that catch wrestling has, right? Uh, so hopefully you guys can understand that, because that has been my experience. Because I think jujitsu is so popular that um, people aren't necessarily going to want to change their way of doing things, even if they learn catch wrestling. They just want to learn some submissions and then incorporate it to improve their jiu-jitsu game, because that's kind of been the thing. And unfortunately too, like that's one of the things that even Billy Robinson mentioned um, when he was teaching at an MMA gym in Arkansas. He was saying that a lot of the people, they didn't necessarily take his class, but they would ask him tips and stuff to get out of certain like jujitsu positions so that they can use a little bit of what Billy Robinson taught to improve their jujitsu. So it wasn't like, I want to learn catch wrestling. It's like, no, show me enough to get out of some common jujitsu positions. So in that way, I know that um, like catch wrestling won't just disappear, right? But yeah, you'll have a lot of people claiming that, oh, it's just jujitsu with some you know, crazy submissions or whatever, or some pins or whatever like that. So it's just not that. So I want to like make sure that that gets said, that gets put out there. But yeah, we definitely need people who appreciate catch wrestling, who can help us keep real wrestling alive, who want to compete in it. So just let us know. Actually, a lot of you guys have been reaching out, but quite often, many of you live far away. So but like, I appreciate you. So that's the thought that counts. But if you do live far away and you want to learn authentic catch wrestling, you can always join our online program, CWA Academy. You can go through our website, catchwrestlingalliance.com. You can find it there. If you're in LA, come train. If you're in South Carolina, go train there. If you're in England, go train in Wigan. So like, learn the real thing from authentic sources. Well, if you're in Kyoto, Japan, go to Riley's gym in Kyoto. So I know there's like a lot of distance, but if you're nearby, go ahead and make the effort. I've trained with some teachers that were like, they were still here in Southern California, but every weekend I would drive almost an hour or whatever, so to go with someone who I felt was really good quality. So it's worth it. Make that pilgrimage, right? But if you live where you have to fly or whatever, then see if you can't do our online academy as well. um so I think that's kind of like the main thing that I wanted to say, where it's like, you really got to put in the work for catch wrestling, just like any other art. You got to be drilling, you got to be rolling, you got to be um uh, thinking of, say, like the wrestling we kind of talked about with our guest here, Marcus, are making comments from England. Really appreciate you commenting. So that's the thing. So Marcus is putting in the work in Wigan, and I know that they like to like roll, right? They like to they do a lot of drilling, so to make sure you understand the wrestling, but then they also spend time sparring, which is really, really important. So it's not just like they're trying to show you all these crazy submission chains and stuff like that. It's just that will not help you become a better wrestler. And you probably won't be able to get these submissions if you don't know how to wrestle, or how to use your wrestling to get control of someone so that you can then like submit them or pin them. All right. So it's a lot different, or catch wrestling might be more different than what you realize. But that's what makes it great. But you have to put in a lot of work to get proficient in it, and definitely to like master it. So it is an art, and it's not something you just learn over one weekend or whatever like that. So look into it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask us on all our social media. I think um, it's easy to kind of get in touch with us, like through, I think, through the Facebook page is usually easier, or even our Instagram and stuff. Those ones seem to be easier for people to send us messages through. So we're on there as well. So yeah, just let us know what you'd like to see also, and just know we'll be putting out videos, kind of doing some breakdowns on the Olympic wrestling that's going to be starting up within the next few days, right? One person that I met who I'm hoping does well, would be Adeline Gray. She's representing the United States in freestyle, women's freestyle. Really, really great person. Trains very, very hard. So best of luck. Best of luck to everybody. I know that actually wrestling ain't easy, right? So just I hope you enjoy it. But it'd be great if catch wrestling was back in the Olympics. But even when freestyle used to be called amateur catch as catch can, they'd already eliminated the submission hold. So it was called amateur catch as catch can, but it was already like going away from the original version, right? And that was many decades ago, so it's only gone further and further away, right? So I don't want to spoil it, or I don't want to spoil freestyle for anybody. If you really enjoy it, you can totally enjoy it, but just know that it's not exactly catch wrestling, right? So there's a lot to it that's different. All right, so I think we had a pretty good talk, right? So if you have any questions or comments, just comment below. And thank you for your help. And together we will keep real wrestling alive.